Well, the Dodgers have traded Gavin Lux. Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers, and you can come in every day or by listening or watching every day, which can be made easier by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here on Monday night. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snyder, and we are the hosts of Locked On Dodgers. We've been doing this here going into year 7 of Locked On Dodgers, a little bit longer than that in terms of us doing a Dodger podcast, and we are heading into year 11 of covering the Dodgers in a few different ways. And continue to cover the Dodgers with this here podcast where we talk Dodgers every Monday through Friday or live Sunday through Thursday most of the times. And we are here. The Dodgers continue to give us things to talk about. We don't have to worry about, running out of things because the Dodgers keep us on our toes. And day after Jeff kind of mentioned, Gavin Lux sticking around and Hyun Kim not being the everyday second baseman for the Dodgers, that plan may have changed a little bit, or definitely changed in one way. Gavin Lux has been traded to the Reds. The Dodgers got back prospect Mike Sirota and a competitive balance pick, I believe, which is currently number 37, but could change, I would imagine, once other guys sign that have, picks, right?
Yeah, there's only one more person who could affect that. Most likely that pick will end up being the 41st pick because Anthony Santander, if he signs with anybody other than the Orioles will get a compensation pick that comes before this one. And then you have the 3 teams that had been bumped down by 10 spots because of the luxury tax reasons, which includes the Dodgers. Those will come next. And then, so most likely the Dodgers will have their regular first round pick at number 40, and then this pick at number 41, probably. But yeah, basically a late first round pick, somewhere in that slot value.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that, but this marks the end of Gavin Lux era in Los Angeles. Jeff, you are one that was probably higher on Gavin Lux than most people, or at least more than me. I was one that, Gavin Lux, I took it for face value of what it was. But even with that, I didn't really expect him to get traded, at least not right now, without, even with the signing of Kim, I agree with you. I don't think he's, an everyday guy at the moment, and maybe there's still other moves to come, and we're going to talk about that. Kind of a weird time for Gavin Lux in LA. There was some highs, there was some lows, there was some injuries, and, at the very least, he leaves with the World Series championship, another one, and knowing that he, contributed to that in a few different ways. We've talked about the ways he helped out in October, and, the two that always stand out to me is getting that walk there in the Freddie Freeman Grand Slam inning to get the first runner on base, and then obviously the game-time sac fly in Game 5 of the World Series. So at the very least for Gavin Lux, there's positivity on his way out.
Yeah, that sac fly ended up being Lux's last plate appearance as a Dodger. I see Mark in the chat who likes to stir things up, pretending that I'm going to backtrack on everything I said about Lux. The fact is, what I said yesterday, I still believe, which is that if the Dodgers trade Lux, which now they have, I don't think their replacement is clearly, obviously in their organization right now. And maybe, I do think there was one possibility that kind of was brought up to me of if they just commit to Andy Pages as the everyday center fielder, then Tommy Edman can be the second baseman or shortstop, depending on where you believe Mookie Betts will end up. I'm not sold on Pahez as a center fielder. But the one thing I am still 1,000% sure of that I said yesterday is that Ha-Seong Kim isn't going to be the Dodgers' everyday second baseman in 2025. And it's, Gavin Lux. I guess the time was it was time for him to move on, and some of that might have just been a practical thing. Obviously Lux's value was highest when he was the minor league player of the year in 2019 or whatever it was, but then his value has been down quite a bit, and it's probably the highest it's been in a long time now that he did just have a great second half, played a solid second base. He is. If he can hit the way he hit in the second half last year, he's going to be good next year. I would guess what this means is that the Dodgers weren't convinced that he was going to hit the way he hit in the second half last year. And even I, as a big Lux fan, I was more hopeful than confident, I think. I'm more confident than a lot of people maybe, but still, if I had to put odds on it, I'd say, maybe 50-50 chance that he was going to be an 850 OPS kind of guy next year, because we've seen, you've mentioned before, a lot of ups and downs with Gavin Lux. I do think a lot of them are health related, but also, it doesn't really matter why you're struggling. If you're struggling almost every year, whether it's for health reasons or not, then maybe that's a different issue. I do still think Gavin Lux is going to be a very good player, but I understand why the Dodgers were ready to move on. And I do think that this return for him is pretty solid. Sirota is a guy the Dodgers actually drafted in 2021 out of high school, and they drafted him late. High school guys don't often get drafted that late, but the Dodgers were hoping to convince him to skip college and come to the Dodgers. He didn't. He went to college, and then the Reds drafted him in the third round last year, and the Dodgers only actually had one pick before Sirota was drafted last year. They had the 23rd pick, something like that. And then Sirota was picked like 87th, something like that. And the Dodgers' next pick was 98th. And so, they might have picked him if he had still been available at the 98th spot or wherever it was their second pick was. It seems like a guy that they've wanted for a while. And you look at the tools that he has, a legitimate center fielder with very good speed and decent pop, good bat to ball. He walks more than he strikes out. And this is all based on his college stats. He hasn't played in the professionals yet. He was drafted in July and didn't make his pro debut at all last year. And so, we'll have to see what he becomes. But we know he's a guy the Dodgers have wanted for a while. And we know the Dodgers are good at drafting and developing. So giving them another first-round draft pick is a good thing too. I think it's a decent return, pretty solid return for a guy in Gavin Lux's situation.
Yeah, again, not knowing what exactly the value is, we didn't really hear about Lux in any trade talks until last week, really, and it was Yankees and Mariners, and the Reds weren't even a team mentioned, and they ended up getting them. It's kind of interesting, usually when younger guys or guys that have endeared themselves to fans or certain fans leave, it's usually for more opportunity. But with Gavin Lux, at least at the moment, a lot of the reporters were saying that he's going to be more of a super utility guy. Maybe they're going to, try to get him play shortstop again. I would imagine if you're going to be a super utility guy, second base, I think Jim Bowden maybe mentioned the outfield. I don't, you always take what he says with a grain of salt. But if that's the plan, then, it's kind of weird that I'm sure if Lux hits like he has in the past, when now he's at his peak, he'll be an everyday guy for the Reds somewhere, because, a lot of the guys that they've had have been either hurt or inconsistent. And, he's been a guy that can find his way into a spot. And especially in that ballpark, maybe add a little bit more punch and, get his home runs up. So, we wish him the best for sure. And, like I said, with the Dodgers return, with the guy that has 2 years left, you don't really know. Like like you said, his value is those 2 years more so than maybe what he's done. Or, if you take him at peak Lux, then yeah, his value would have been a lot higher. But to get a prospect, a third round pick last year that had, from everything reading so far, could have had first round aspirations heading into his junior year. And then he had a really bad junior year in college. And, that might have tailed him off a little bit. But there's a lot of good numbers in the sense of, the numbers that they look at. And then to get another pick late first round, the Dodgers have done relatively well down there in the bottom of the first round. And, you get another, $2.5 million, I think, in the bonus slot, whether it's that pick or to save money to have for later picks, whatever it is, they didn't have to trade Lux. They did trade Lux. And if you're going to trade Lux, you could have done a lot worse. And I don't know if you could have done much better. So.
Yeah, for sure.
What does it mean for the Dodgers? What does it mean for the immediate and for the future? We'll get into that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Live events are fun. I'm a big guy going to live events, live sporting events, music, theater, comedy, whatever it is. I'm trying to get out a night on the town, and that's where Game Time can help you out, because Game Time has now made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I remember last year I went to a comedy show and used the Game Time app and was able to find the tickets I wanted, and for the price, that was great, and I was able to go take a trip down to San Diego and watch some comedy. So that was great of Game Time. And not to have Game Time Picks, it would have made it even easier. So I'm excited to look forward to my next live event where I use Game Time and Game Time Picks. So I'm going to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of the listens of your day, your first listen, last listen, third listen, whatever it is. We appreciate you if you're listening. We appreciate you if you're watching here live on YouTube, or if you're watching non-live, but you're still watching. Anyone that listens to Locked On Dodgers is appreciated. And remember, if you're on YouTube, you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. And we're continuing to talk. Gavin Lux been traded to the Reds, opens up a 40-man roster spot, and it opens up a spot at second base at the moment. It was reported by Fabian Ardaya that the Dodgers still have plans of Mookie Betts being the everyday shortstop at the moment. You mentioned earlier, maybe Pajes in center, Edman at second. There's a lot of different ways the Dodgers can go with the way the roster is currently constructed. And obviously, there's even more ways to go if they decide to fill shortstop or second base a different way, Jeff. We can go a lot of different ways with this, but let's just talk through it.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, I've seen a lot of people talking about the glut the Dodgers have at middle infield. And, yeah, they do have a lot of guys who can play middle infield, Lux being one of them. But also, most of those guys play other positions too. And so, it's not like Mookie Betts has to be a specific position. Tommy Edman has to be a specific position. Even Miguel Rojas can play all over the infield. Chris Taylor can play all over the infield and the outfield. They have plenty of options, but I think I think for me, I still believe that Kiké Hernandez will be on this Dodgers team, which then, whether that is, maybe he's in a platoon at second base, or a platoon in center field. That Kiké can play all over the field. It still wouldn't even surprise me if the Dodgers pulled off some surprise trade for a shortstop, because all the things they're saying about Mookie at shortstop could mean that Mookie's going to play shortstop. It could also mean that they want people to believe that Mookie's going to play shortstop so that they don't get manipulated when they're trying to trade for a shortstop. If the Cubs are trying to cut Dansby Swanson's salary, the Dodgers don't want to be in a position where, hey, we need a shortstop. That's not a good bargaining position, whether it's Swanson or Bo Bichette or whoever else, maybe somebody we haven't even talked about yet. It's still very much a possibility, I think, that they might be looking for a shortstop. But maybe it is just their last offensive piece. They're thinking Kiké Hernandez, and then you do play Hae-Sung Kim some at shortstop, at second base. You play Kiké some at second base. You play Edman some at second base. And it's just kind of a revolving door for different guys. I've seen in the chat here, somebody's still going back to Nolan Arenado at third and Max Muncy at second base. I really don't believe that's going to happen. I think when you have 5 guys on the roster who are capable of playing a good second base. It would be weird to put Max Muncy there, who I don't think could play a good second base without the shift. But yeah, they have a ton of options. And when you throw in the likelihood that Kiké Hernandez is probably back on the team, that's just one more option there. And, Tommy Edman, the 1 Gold Glove he won was at second base. Second base is probably his best position. And so maybe it does make sense just have Tommy Edman be the second baseman, but then you need to figure out your center field situation because Andy Paez, between his defensive struggles and his struggles against right-handed pitching, I'm not totally convinced that he's a 162 guy out there in center field or even a 120 guy out there in center field. I think he's I think he'll definitely get some playing time, but I have a hard time seeing him being the everyday center fielder unless he comes to spring training and shows, hey, look, I put in a ton of work and here I am ready to play center field. But Tommy Edman at second base might make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think, like I said, as it currently stands, there's a lot of ways that Dodgers can go with the roster. Kiké is the obvious one to go to because this does open up a spot, one on the 40-man and one on the, presumed 26-man roster. The other way you can go, it's one of those where we talk about this a lot with the Dodgers. Like, you don't need to have an all-star at every position. And we obviously have been spoiled as Dodger fans to have a lot of all-stars at almost all positions. But if the Dodgers decide right now, like, hey, we're going to go with, Kiké or not, whatever, Chris Taylor, if Kiké signs, Chris Taylor leaves, they decide, hey, we're going to give Outman another chance in the outfield against righties. Paez will play outfield, center field against lefties. We'll have Edman at second base, and then everyone will kind of get breaks here and there from Rojas and Kiké or whoever else is on the roster, Hai-Sung Kim, everybody else. That's a way to go, and they'd be fine. The Dodgers are okay, we have 8 spots for sure, and then we have one spot that's not for sure. Like that's way more than almost every team out there available, that has the roster right now. Now, this opens up then for, more trades. We know Diego Cartaya is probably going to get traded, hopefully in the next few days. Hopefully not just outright, sent out, or maybe he does clear waivers, who knows? But that could be part of a trade. I don't know how much value he has, but they could be making different moves here and there. But it's one of those where we talked about this after the Teo signing. The Dodgers are in a good spot right now. It's a little bit different spot now with Gavin Lux out, but if they had opening day tomorrow, they'd be able to field a very competent roster with just one unknown, whether that's second base or center field. And that's a lot better than most teams have right now on January 6th. And it's going to be maybe a lot different in February 6th. I remember us talking about a month ago about Mookie playing shortstop and how I said, Mookie's a shortstop on December, whatever, but that doesn't mean he's going to be the shortstop on, March 18th, whenever they start the season. Like, there's still a lot of things that can happen. And if Mookie is shortstop, he has a full off season. The talk of people, I saw one here in the chat about Mookie's offense suffering. Last year, Mookie Betts was learning shortstop on the fly and was off to an MVP start once again on offense. Yeah, there you go. Jeff pulled on.
There's his splits last year. His best OPS by far last year was in his 280 plate appearances as a shortstop. Second best was right field. Third best was second base. The fact is Mookie Betts is a streaky hitter, always has been. And, when he started struggling, the narrative at the beginning of the season was Mookie's hitting so well because he's focusing so much attention on playing shortstop. He doesn't have time to think at the plate, and he's just letting his natural ability take over. And then he started struggling and said, oh, now the problem is Mookie's thinking so much about playing shortstop that he doesn't have time to think about hitting. And now he doesn't have the natural ability to do that. Like, no, the fact is Mookie Betts is a really good hitter who goes through hot stretches and cold stretches. And, if he plays the whole season at shortstop, he will have hot stretches and cold stretches. And overall, his numbers will be very similar to what we expect from Mookie Betts because he is a very good hitter.
Yeah. And again, like I said, I'm still not fully convinced of Mookie at shortstop myself. But if he is opening day shortstop, like, I don't have an issue with it at the moment. I expect him. It's literally just, working on the throws. If that's all he's working on this offseason, along with his normal workouts, and then he'll be just fine. Having to learn shortstop a week before you fly to Korea and then on the go, like, literally practicing an hour and a half before every game. I would see him out there, working out with Rojas before every game. And I'm like, man, how does he do it? Like, that's so much. You already play, a 3-hour game almost, and then everything else that comes with it. So if he's a shortstop, it's fine. I think people are jumping to a lot of different conclusions, and it's January 6th. And if Mookie's the shortstop in 2 months, hey, more power to him. And if he's not, we'll talk about whatever that deal is. So.
Yeah.
Which is what we're going to talk about next. What else could come next for the Dodgers, whether internally or externally? We'll get into it. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. There's a lot of playoff football this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So make sure to put that $5 down, get you $200, and then get in on the FanDuel app, get your live bets in, get your same-game parlays in, put together a few different things. Whatever you want to do, it's all right there on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. So visit the site and share betting. Visit FanDuel.com, check out the betting lines, and put down your $5 bet and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers, or thank you for being an everydayer. If you're an everydayer, that's just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate you. There's a lot of you here live with us on YouTube. There's a lot of you with us in Locked On Dodgers Insiders, and you can be one of those people. If you go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, become an insider, get text directly from us, keeping you up to date. You would have heard about the Lux trade and all the other details that came out about it. We also have a Discord channel that's exclusive to Locked On Dodgers Insiders. So make sure to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. And Jeff, we've touched a little bit about it so far, and we've touched on a lot of different things so far this offseason. I mean, we've even talked about trading for Carlos Correa and different things of that nature. But now with the Dodgers, Kiké is an obvious answer to this. But beyond that, what else could be on the horizon for the Dodgers in this offseason?
Honestly, I think that this particular roster spot, there's now an open spot on the 40-man roster. And, obviously, as far as the 26-man roster goes, when that time comes, maybe this was just opening up a spot for Ha-Seong Kim, more likely maybe Kiké Hernandez, But I think the 40-man roster spot immediately makes it a little bit more likely the Dodgers get Tanner Scott. We talked about his asking price last week. I think that asking price will come down when he realizes that no one's offering him that. And I think that most likely Tanner Scott fills that roster spot before Kiké Hernandez, because like we said before, I think Kiké Hernandez is a guy who the Dodgers, they have a good enough relationship with him. They could talk to him and say, look, we want you here. Let's agree on a deal. And then first day of spring training, we will finalize it when we have open 40-man roster spots. Bing, bang, boom, no problem. It doesn't affect Kiké's preparation or anything, gives him stability. Tanner Scott is a guy they don't have that existing relationship with. So if they want to sign him, they need a spot to sign him. And, they've said that adding another reliever continues to be a priority for them this offseason. And so Tanner Scott is the best one available. We talked last week about other possibilities. If it's not Tanner Scott, maybe it's one of those guys, but I think it's Tanner Scott. I think he fills this spot because right now the Dodgers 40-man roster is very pitcher heavy. So it would feel a little bit weird to trade Lux and then replace that spot with a pitcher, just making it more pitcher heavy. But since they will have guys who are able to go on the 60-day IL in the spring, and so then at that point, it's Kiké Hernandez probably coming in. One of those spots probably goes to Clayton Kershaw. But then maybe, when Dalton Rushing is ready for a 40-man roster spot, boom. And actually, the other spot is probably Roki Sasaki. So we may have just filled all 4 40-man roster spots that are going to open up the first day of spring training, but 2 of those will be replacing pitchers with position players. So it'll kind of restore some of that balance that, so I think they can afford to go a little bit more out of balance right now and go get Tanner Scott.
Yeah. I would normally say here, I don't think we're getting Tanner Scott, but, there's been plenty of times where you've been confident in things happening and they end up happening. So, it's possible that's the next move. And, the way the Dodgers have moved this offseason, it's been relatively quiet, and then something happens. Like, Hai-Song Kim, we hadn't heard anything about him, and then boom, the Dodgers had signed him. Even with Teoscar, we hadn't really heard much beyond, what Teoscar wanted, and that they were close, they weren't close, whatever, so it wasn't really sure what was going on. And then boom, they signed him, the Gavin Lux to the Reds. Like there was reports of Lux, being available for trade maybe, but the Reds weren't even a team mentioned. So, the Dodgers could be moving stealthily and, getting somebody ready to go. Again, there's no rush on what it is. If it does happen soon, great. If not, the Dodgers will keep that roster spot open until they have room to fill it. But it does just make everything else more intriguing in the sense of kind of what we talked about in shortstop, second base. Like if there is a move to be made now, if somebody does open up, the Dodgers are open, they have the roster spot and whatever else that comes with it. Even a guy like Mike Sirota, I'm sure the Dodgers like him, but he could always get traded, I guess, again, or something else could happen with, different things. So I'm interested to see what they do and be surprised. I like being surprised by the Dodgers. Obviously, last year Ohtani was such an easy one, and it was the surprise came in the way his contract was structured. Yamamoto, same thing, but it was very easy, to link that. And the only surprise was, how much he actually got. But other than that, like different things that come out of the woodworks or come out of nowhere, I'm always excited to see that. And I think that's kind of what I'm waiting for this Dodger offseason. We've had everything we wanted so far. Tanner Scott would add to that. But, surprise.
I think Blake Snell was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah. It was surprising. Maybe not the name, but they actually got him.
Yeah, especially that early in the offseason.
Yeah. So
one other point I want to address that I saw in the chat, Charles Aguilar says, I think shortstop and second will be played by multiple players. I would guess that Mookie Betts is not going to bounce around. Obviously, if he starts at shortstop and then it doesn't work and they move him to second base, that's one thing. But I don't think he's going to go back and forth. And Mookie's going to play, pretty much every day. And so one of those, either shortstop or second base, is going to be locked down by Mookie Betts. And even if it's both of them at different times in the season, but he's not going to bounce back and forth. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see whichever one Mookie's not playing being one of those things where you do see a rotating cast of Kiké and Edman and Rojas. And, I'm not going to pretend I expect Chris Taylor to be on the roster, but all those guys who can play, Hae-Sung Kim, obviously. But one of those I think will be locked down by Mookie Betts.
We both stood out against Nolan Arenado. Let's just say he stays on the Cardinals for the time being. Would you see the Dodgers trying Max Muncy at second base at all, just to kind of keep, that of it? Maybe not for Arenado specifically, maybe anybody that could play third base, but do you think that could be a possibility?
For me, it would only be if it was, that they were getting Nolan Arenado, or they were thinking of signing Alex Bregman, an actual established third baseman. But also, Arenado, I don't think is going to happen. And Bregman, I think, would probably actually be a better second baseman than Max Muncy would. And maybe fits the offensive profile a little bit better too.
Talking about in season, like we're already in season. Arenado stayed. He has a hot start. You see them trying Muncy like in season at second base.
I think it would be more likely in spring training just to see what they have. Hey, let's play Muncy at second base here for a couple games and see, because a lot of people, and we've talked about this before, just think, Max Muncy, he's played second base before. He actually made the All-Star team as a second baseman. He could totally do it. But that was back when there was a shift, and I don't see it happening. But spring training is the time to try that kind of thing, I guess. So I have a hard time seeing them try that in season, unless it would, even in a blowout game. You don't get enough blowout games to really get enough to see what he could do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still obviously, on the no to Nolan Arenado, but it would be interesting, obviously if it got to a point. I guess Bregman too, like if it got to a point and he's not signed by spring training, but I can't see that happening either. So, like I said, I think there's going to be a move that solidifies the middle infield, and we'll just have to wait and see what that move is.
Yeah, and I guess one name we haven't said that we should at least say before we wrap this up is Luis Robert Jr., because having him in center field would then push Tommy Edman to a middle infield spot or multiple middle infield spots, and so having an everyday center fielder, that's the thing with all the Dodgers with so much positional flexibility. Replacing Lux doesn't have to be a second baseman. It could be a second baseman or a shortstop or a center fielder, at least those spots, and there may be others. So there's a lot of things they could do, and it'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll be interesting. I hope that we don't just get boring for the next month and 5 weeks until pitchers and catchers report. Hopefully it'll be interesting stuff going on between now and then.
Yeah. I saw some chatter in the chat about the Padres situation going on. I don't know if any of us are well informed enough to talk about that. Does it help them with Roki Sasaki? We can't say for sure, but definitely something to monitor. Less turmoil on this side, I guess.
The Dodgers were already the overwhelmingly obvious choice for Sasaki, and this definitely doesn't hurt the Dodgers' chances.
Yeah, so we'll we got 10 days until Roki Sasaki can, or less than that, till he can actually sign. Realistically, he's probably going to sign a few days after that. But it's all coming to a head faster than we think. So at the very least, it won't be all boring if the Dodgers do end up not getting anybody at the moment. So, you got anything else before we head out, Jeff?
The A's just extended Brent Rooker.
Oh.
5-year, $60 million extension. Wow.
Brent Rooker wants to spend his time in Sacramento.
Apparently, because, I think he could have made a lot more than that when the time came. But good for him, good for them, I guess. And honestly, it makes him more tradable for prospects with that team-friendly deal. So, if they go that route, good for him. But I guess he probably won't be traded to the Dodgers this offseason.
Yeah, probably not. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Even if you're an everydayer, sometimes you can be an everydayer and not subscribe. Please hit that subscribe button, get our numbers up. Probably shooting for 10K this season. So, help us get there if you're not already subscribed. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube that are from the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast, become Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us and get invited to our exclusive Discord channel with all other Locked On Dodgers insiders. So join subtext.com/LockedOnDodgers for that. Check us out on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at SnyDog. I'm at Vincents91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, LockedOnDodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. I lost myself. You don't have to agree.
We're here every weekday morning, remember?
Oh, yeah, we're here every weekday morning. So make sure to tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Well, we'll talk. No, you say we'll talk to you later. I say have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow. Nailed it.